around the piers. Moonlight shivers like drawn spears. Ropes knock hard on a weathered mast. Night keeps score of the vessel's past. No chapel bell and no courtly flame can cleanse the docks of their hidden shame. Silver could vanish before it was due. Crates marked lawful were broken by dawn. Ledgers altered and witnesses gone. Boatmen rode quiet with murder for hire. Smugglers fed greed like a furnace of fire. One magistrate swore he would tear it apart. He followed the trail with a fearless heart. But under the bridge where the tide ran black, the river took him and gave nothing back. Knives in the alley, hooks in the rain. Truth was a cargo they buried in chain. One wrong question, one wrong hand, and death would rise from the riverbank sand. Beat the water, hear the oars collide. Blackfriars calling with the gallows tide. Teeth of the current and fist of stone. Take what they want and return no one. Mark the crossing where the dead men glide. Blackfriars rules with the gallows tide. Rumor spread fast through the tavern smoke of a drowned-eyed judge and a smuggler's oath. Some said the ferryman worked for a ring, moving both contraband and a murdered king. Others claimed there was gold in the floor, hidden beneath an abandoned store. Yet every raid by the watch arrived late, as if the city itself served the gate. Clerks took coin and the guards stood blind, while the river erased both the proof and the mind. And under the arches where moonlight broke, a body came up with a cord at the throat. What law can stand when the docks are sold? When justice is weighed against harbor gold? The current keeps what the courts deny and carries the names where the eels pass by. dark, where the raids began. Caravans tremble by the firelight line, gold in the saddlebags, blood in the sign. Far from the empire, far from the throne, the desert keeps laws that were carved in stone. Across the salt plains where the black flags ride, steel-eyed marauders strike out of the wide. Spice and silver shimmer under canvas and rope. Merchants move slowly while the raiders elope. No harbor to hide and no coastline to claim, but plunder still answers to a pirate's name. They descend like thunder from the ridge above, with sabers that glitter and no trace of love. Camels are screaming, the wagons collide. Dust becomes fury in the sweep of the tide. No mercy in motion, no pact in the sand. Only the daring survive this land. A prayer on the lips and a knife in the hand. Fortune is taken, never blood. Ride through the dune fire, tearing the veils apart. Hold to the fast wind, the wasteland heart. Gold in the saddle, death at the side. Silk root raiders in a merciless ride. Ride where the trade roads bleed to the sky. No one can catch them. No one asks why. From Kashgar to Samarkand, rumors were spread of ghosts on horseback and caravans dead. Princes and hunters with banners unfurled, but speed was the weapon that mastered the world. Water was a ration, your frenzy ran deep. They slept with their bridles and killed without sleep. Jewels in leather and incense in crates, broken seals scattered at the canyon gates. Each ambush was timed by the stars overhead. Each victory fought with the unburied dead. And still through the wasteland the outlaw song rode of riders who murdered for silk and for gold. No court ever judged them, no ledger could tell how kingdoms were robbed in the furnace of hell. They vanished by dawn where the red dust would rise, leaving only the vultures to circle the skies. bars were broken, the altars defied, the faithful were sorted, the doubters denied, still crossed with scripture in smoke-choked air, and death learned quickly to answer his prayer. He marched through the square with a blood-ridden will, while the bells above him were ringing still. A throne built fast on fever and dread, a gospel of fire for the living and dead. The banners climbed while the old world burned, and no one escaped when the tables turned. Ashes of the heretic king fall from the sky when the death choir sang. Crown of blasphemy forged in the heat, ground into dust under marching feet. Ashes of the heretic king, no salvation in the vows you bring. He broke the seals of the granary doors, fed war to the hungry and chained them to wars. The mothers went silent, the children turned hard. Hope was rationed in the palace yard. His captains proud with the butcher's grace, judgment and hunger on every face. Yet outside the walls the circle grew tight, pikes in the dawn and fire by night. The seething lines closed like an iron snare, and famine became the ruler there. Still from the tower he swore they would rise, though rot had already entered their eyes. No tyrant falls in a single breath. He drags down cities on the road to death, but every false sun burns out in time and leaves behind only soot and One crest. But out on the plain where the dry wind spun, riders assembled with their faces hard as stone. No flag of empire, no sworn command, only fast steel and a burnt red lead. They watched from the ridges, they measured the pace, then stormed downhill in a killing race. No wall in the desert, no judge on the trail. One stumble, one cry, and the strong prevail. The trade roads glittered, but death moved first, and hunger rode faster than coin or thirst. Strike for the convoy, split the line, take the silver, salt and wine. Dust to the lungs and flame to the wheel. This is the law of the saddle and steel. Strike for the convoy, leave no sign. Samarkand burning behind their ride. Drivers were dragged from the swaying carts, guards cut down before they could harden their hearts. Bolts were fired through canvas and hide, camel bells broke in a panic tide. A prince once promised to cleanse the way, sent mailed lancers to make them pay. Yet under the stars by a canyon bend, the hunters fell where the dunes descend. Their armor flashed and was swallowed whole by speed, by grit, by the raider's soul. And stories spread from the wells to the gate of a butcher bed no throne could break. What grows on the road where the kingdoms trade? Greed in the sun and knives in the shade. No empire lasts when the outlands decide which goods reach the dawn and which men will die. No shrine, no mercy remains. Only the hoofbeat over the plains. Break through the escort, tear down the chain. Samarkand howls in the wake of the slain. At dawn the road lay broken and bare, creeks split open to the desert air. A torn blue banner, a wheel half burned, and no safe passage for those who return. The trade winds kept what the riders won, and the steppe rolled on beneath the children learned early that revolt does not sleep. The bishop's lines tighten with cannon and steel, while inside the city no wound had time to heal. Gold chains on the rulers, dust on every face. Law was bent and broken in the holy place. New kings spoke of heaven with the butcher's calm, and ruin marched daily to the sound of a psalm. Then the circle narrowed, then the final breach. Fire climbed the rooftops faster than a preacher could preach. The ladder struck the rampart, the barricades gave away. The chosen and the damned were the same on that day. The banners fell in tatters, the last cry split the rain, and cages waited empty for the warning to remain. A torrent of steel in a spiraling flight. Let guitar screaming like the fall of the night. Rise, hear the war cry, tear the heavens wide. Hold to the walls while the saints collide. No throne stands forever when the zealots reign. Minster burns alive in a crown of pain. Rise through the siege and the starving years. Lock every prayer in a vault of fears. Fall, let the false crown break against the ground. Law, ring the bells with a burial sound. No dream survives where the blade was king, only the cages and the rust that cling. Fall, when the furious gospel dies. Call, hangs the proof before all eyes. All eyes. High above the city, the warning sways. Three silent relics against the haze. Not for glory, not for grace, only for those who would weaponize faith. Munster remembers with iron breath how paradise can be hammered to death. Ooh, yeah. Wheels creak slow through the fevered lane, canvas tied down against the rain. A lantern swings with a jaundiced flame, no one outside dare speak a name. Doors are barred and windows sealed, while the midnight burden is never revealed. Bellmen passed with a hollow cry, mocking the houses condemned to die. Yet under the cloth and the rotten straw moved a darker trade than the city saw. Gold changed hands where the sickbed stood. Mercy was bought but never for good. Some were taken before their hour, dragged from the weak by a hidden power. Cartwrights, grave diggers, brokers of dread, building their fortune from the nearly dead. Street after street, the rumor spread. Not every soul in the wagon was dead. Coins in the bucket and not at the gate, and silence became the partner of fight. Roll that cart through the pest house door, count the living as dead once more. Hide the breath and cover the eyes. Truth goes cheap when the city dies. Roll that cart where the black wheels grind. Leave no witness behind. Mothers kept watch by the candle stain, listening hard through the coughing pain. Some heard fists from the timbered bed, some swore prayers rose under the thread. Clerks wrote numbers by light, while bodies were tallied through half the night. A physician vanished, a porter fled, a ledger was found by a chapel shed. Names crossed out, then entered again. Profit measured in panic and pain. And somewhere beyond where the grave pit steamed, the pact to us forged more vile than it seemed. When plague wears the mask of a lawful chore, who counts the missing, who knows the score? The cart kept moving, the city obeyed, and guilt rode quiet in the trade they made. Like iron on bone, drums hit hard as the wheels roll on. Roll that cart through the pest house door, count the living as dead once more. Hide the breath and cover the eyes, truth goes cheap when the city dies. Roll that cart where the black wheels grind. Leave no witness behind. Drive that cart till the dawn turns pale. Stack the lies in the burial trail. Seal each cry on the hempen ward. Call it duty, call it God. Drive that cart through the choking air. Judgment is riding there. Morning broke on the washed-stone streets. Rain ran red where the wagons meet. No court returned what the night had claimed. No priest could cleanse what the ledger's name. Still in the rattle of iron and rain, the plague cart comes again. milk and the jars of wine. One old captain stood his ground. His curved blade sang with a brutal sound. He dropped 3 raiders into the sand before a spear went through his hand. The crate split open, the jewels poured wide, and the desert glowed with a plundered pride. By dawn the whales and the border towns would learn once more how the weak fall down. Trade makes kingdoms, but fear makes kings. And out on the ways there are harsher things. No treaty holds where the moon runs cold, and men are measured by what they can hold. Whisper in Whitechapel, a name never known. Steel in the night, and the heart turns to stone. The alleys stay hungry, the silence runs wild. London is watching with the fear of a child. Newspapers rattle with the merciless beat. Footsteps are cutting through the market and grime. A killer moves faster than the hands of time. Black coat, no witness, just a flicker, then gone. One scream in the distance and the red dawn comes on. Lawmen keep chasing through the soot and the rain, but every cold turning leads them nowhere again. Names on the record, blood on the file. Panic keeps rising mile after mile. No face to remember, no hand left in sight. Only the terror that feeds on the night. He runs through the smoke, through the old street fire. Lost in the maze, climbing higher and higher. No trace, no mercy, no saving light. Whitechapel calling through the dead of night. He runs through the smoke, no chain can bind. Long after dawn, he is still in the mind. Crowds at the corner, sermons and blame. Rumors are building a kingdom of shame. Doctors and beggars all speak in alarm. Mothers pull children away from the harm. Letters are taunting with venom and pride, while ministers tremble and truth tries to hide. Every new murder did madness wear chain. Ring the bells louder, let justice arise. But fear has 1,000 unholy disguises. It came like a fever, then slipped from the frame, leaving the century branded in shame. Whitechapel calling through the dead of night. He runs through the smoke, no chain can bind. Long after dawn, he is still in the moon, and the whole world stares. Long live the fear that the city now bears. No grave, no verdict, no final name, only the legend and the endless flame. He runs through the smoke, through history's vein. Long after flesh, he is living again. Gaslight is fading, the papers grow old, but murder remembers what history holds. One shape in the distance, then nothing to find. Whitechapel vanishing, never confirmed. A surgeon of torment perfected his trade. No battlefield banner, no war horse, no crown. Yet ruin walked proudly in a blood-stained gown. He studied the broken like livestock and meat, measured out suffering, precise and complete. In chambers of fever with scalpels aligned, he cut through the flesh and unmade the mind. The warder stood silent, the patrons looked on, while one more human name was steadily gone. White tiles, black books, instruments bright, hands without mercy at work in the night. No prayer could soften the cold-minded heart that opened the body and shattered the heart. Steel on the table, fire in the brine. The Butcher of Bedlam is carving again. Cold were his fingers, steady his hand. Pain was the law he made to command. Steel on the table, page. One girl went under with fever and fright, came back hollow-eyed from the chemical light. One man fought hard till his shoulders were torn, woke to a silence more brutal than scorn. No cord ever weighed what was taken there, because power wore learning like ceremonial wear. What mask is darker than reason abused? What throne stands fouler than trust misused? He did not need armies, he needed a room and a city that praised him while tightening the clean language could wash out the shame. But deep in the ward, where the lost ones bled, the butcher still summoned the gladly and could decipher the code, tracing the fortunes through every road. From harbor to gallows, from tax to the grave, he found the same circle the mighty men gave. A widow was silenced, a witness was drowned. One warehouse at midnight was burned to the ground. Still he kept writing by guttering light, building his proof through the depth of the night. Then boots hit the stair and the shutters were torn. The hunters arrived before morning was born. He fled through the archive with ash in his lungs, while bells in the distance like warnings were rung. Who keeps the record when records are slain? on the ground were thrown. The killers laughed as they stripped the dead and drank from skins by the fallen bride. Empires boast of their roads and gold, but roads grow weak when the knives grow bold. No map stays true and no oath stays clean. Where greed turns men to a killing machine. Forever lost. Stone corridors hung with the broken creed, where power and spectacle gorge on need. Coins change hands at the outer rail to watch men crack and women fail. South of the river the crowd pressed near, chasing a thrill dressed up as fear. Ladies in velvet and lords in lace came for the ruin on every face. Inside the keepers controlled the keys, with rods, with hunger, with brutal ease. Minds were twisted by filth and shame, pain administered under the name of care. Every scream was a market cry, every locked ward taught hope to die. And high above in the winter glare, the city looked on and called it fair. Who guards the lost when profit reigns? Who speaks for the bound in the iron frames? When madness is traded from hand to hand, mercy is buried beneath command. Crown of Bedlam, welded in bone, built for the cast out, crushed and alone. Raise up the bars, let the cold eyes see how the mighty feed on misery. Crown of Bedlam, heavy and grim, gold for the gallery, darkness within. Some were afflicted, some merely crossed. Some were hidden because they were costly to keep, then lost. Some knew too much, some loved the wrong. Some would not kneel to the righteous song. Records were altered, names withdrawn. One stroke of ink and a life was gone. A surgeon smiled with his tools laid bright, while watchers applauded the theater of fright. No jury gathered, no witness stayed, only the trade that the wardens made. And through the halls where the fever ran, the house grew fat on the breaking of man. Not every prison is built with walls. Somewhere a prayer while the hammer falls. Not every tyrant to rise with a sword. Some come softly and call themselves Lord. Late guitar tears through the choking air. Drums pound hard like a public stair. Crown of Bedlam, welded in bone, built for the cast out, crushed and alone. Raise up the bars, let the cold eyes see how the mighty feed on misery. Crown of Bedlam, heavy and grim, gold for the gallery. Darkness within, break the Bedlam crown, scatter the chain, tear down the stage, built out of pain. No throat stands clean when the helpless bleed. No law is pure when it fattens on need. Break the Bedlam crown, let the gates swing wide. Judge the hands that were sanctified. Rain touched the yard and the crowd withdrew, leaving the iron to rust right through. Yet under the stone in the old damp beam, the house still lives in the public dream. A kingdom of order, savage and cold, where suffering glittered and tickets were sold. Cold towers are watching the river below. Chains kiss the gallows where the night winds blow. A hooded man waits where the torchlight sways, counting the condemned by the end of their days. Stone keeps the secrets that the judges denied, and the bell tower carries the names that have died. Under the archways, the warrant was read. Crowds gathered close for the price on ahead. Thieves and dissenters, the broken, the poor, all felt the pull of the executioner's door. He came without trembling, with ritual hands, a servant of terror where authority stands. No plea could unmake what the sentence had sealed. No priest could restore what the scaffold revealed. With a knot tied tight and a stair carved in frost, he measured each life by the state's bitter cost. Iron on stone and a drum in the square. Judgment descended like poison in air. Faces looked upward, but none dared to speak. Power was strongest where mercy was weak. And let the bell cry over the spires tonight. Drag every sin to the edge of the light. No platform. One kingdom from death. Rumors grew darker with each rising dawn. Some swore the hangman still worked after gone. A lantern at midnight, a rope in the rain, a figure still pacing the execution lane. Magistrates changed and the empire grew old, yet tales of his footsteps were steadily told. Lovers crossed bridges and hurried away when hoofbeats and silence arrived without day. In taverns they whispered, he counted once more those who dealt cruelty from chamber to floor. Sophia changed its clothing, but never its name, and Prague fed the legend with guilt and with shame. Was he a man or the mask of the law? A handmaid of order that nobody saw. When the city stood guilty of all it had done, the rope became memory that never would run. Like blades through the air, drums pound like boots on the execution stair. Hang, let the bell cry over the spires tonight. Drag every sin to the edge of the light. No one outruns what the black rope decides. Prague keeps the verdict where the old sorrow hides. From death, rise, let the dead eyes burn through the crown. Fall, hear the rope, make the tyrants bow down. No hand is clean when the judgment is sold. Prague bears the weight of the merciless old. Rise from the stones where the last cries bled. The hangman walks onward where the living still tread. Dawn stains the river, a color like rust. The scaffold stands quiet, devouring trust. One hood, one rope, one story retold by towers and courts and the wintering cold. And somewhere past midnight, where the old streets bend, the hangman keeps walking, and never will, beneath the feast of gilded halls, a colder realm behind the walls. No trumpet sounds, no banners wave, only the mouth of a waiting grave. A spiral descent through choking stone into a kingdom not your own. Shakes in a brittle hand as chalk marks fade in the burial land. Skulls are stacked where the passage bends, jaw by jaw in a line that never ends. Moisture runs down the ancient seam, dust turns silver in the dying beam. Every chamber narrows the will to stand, every breath feels stolen from the land. No star can guide and no swells, the dark keeps counting its endless sails. One misturn and the pulse runs wild. Stone grows patient, cold and riled. Into the catacombs, lower we go, past the ranks of the eyeless rose. Teeth of the ages, white in the night, closing around every flicker of light. Into the catacombs, under the throne. Paris above, but you die alone. There were men who entered for thrill and pride. There were thieves who believed they could master the ride. There were scholars who followed the dust of the dead, and lovers who laughed at the tale they had read. But tunnels divide like a serpent's tongue, and courage decays when the air grows young. A drop flame, a cry, then the pounding race. Cold sweat burning on every face. No chapel choir and no city law can rescue the flesh from the underjaw. Millions reduced to a voiceless frame, still hold dominion without a name. The streets above may glitter and shine, but below them waits the oldest design. on sight, but flames hit the records. The suspects were gone and the king of the net were kept moving on.